Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michaela. I am your host. And the theme of today's episode is my experience breaking up with social media, which might sound surprising to you because I am a creator and I rely on social media as my full-time income. But I will say there is a method to the madness. I am feeling a lot better, and honestly, it feels kind of good to be out of the loop. So we are going to talk about this today. Basically, why I'm doing this, how I'm doing it, the social media's like negative impact on the brain, all that kind of stuff. Before we get into it, we are going to quickly run through the usual housekeeping. So first things first, as always, you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard when you use the code podcast1. Podcast1 is a podcast exclusive code. I don't share it anywhere else. If you ever have an issue with it, you can just send me an email. I'll make sure you get all settled up. The personal finance dashboard is my signature money management tool. I like to think of it as a financial control center. So it's basically your one-stop place for managing your money, tracking your expenses, setting and reaching your financial goals, looking at your annual budget, tracking and monitoring your progress, and actually getting clear data-driven insights that you can use to make more confident financial decision making. So if you are in a mode where you are trying to overhaul your finances or get a better grasp on your finances, I highly recommend the PFD. If you're looking for something that's a little bit simpler, or you just want a place where you can create a budget and nothing else, I recommend checking out the basic budgeting template. This is a more straightforward isn't necessarily the right word, just pared down template where you can track all of your expenses. It's, created through my own break your budget lens. So all of my templates sort of operate very similarly. And, you can track your expenses, set your goals, design all of your different categories and whatnot. And you'll get a monthly budget snapshot that also gives you a couple of different insights that you can use to, again, make better decisions. And finally, if you are ready to take your financials to the next level, I recommend you check out my FIRE planning template. This is a template where you can map out your journey to becoming financially independent. If you want to retire early, it can help you do that. And it can also help you really discover how to become work optional. This is something that I feel very, very passionately about because we do not all have to work a 9-to-5 forever. There are other ways to earn a living. I talk about this as well on my podcast through bringing, some different guests on who have their own businesses or maybe didn't do as well in corporate and are still thriving, whether they have their business or they work part-time or they do a variety of different things. So with this FIRE planning template, you can map out like exactly what you need to do financially in order to reach whatever your retirement or work optional timeline looks like. So it's a really great tool. I have been enjoying it for mapping out my plan to become hopefully work optional and be able to work part-time sometime in my 30s or my 40s. It's a really fun exercise to go through. So that's a great add-on to either the PFD or the PFD or the basic budgeting template. And it really helps answer the question, how much? How much do I need to be saving? How long do I need to be doing this? It's a great way to map that out. The last thing in terms of housekeeping that I want to bring to your attention are my books, because we are in grad season, and with grad season comes the perfect time to, give a recent grad, the gift of financial independence and professional professional confidence, we'll say. So you should check out my books, Own Your Money, Own Your Career. Great gifts for new grads. I mean, they're great gifts all the time. They're great books that you should read. And when you buy them, you support my business, which is really important, and you make my publisher happy. So please buy these. They're always linked in the show notes. With that, let's get into the episode. As I mentioned, we are going to be talking about how I am breaking up with social media and, more importantly, curing my phone addiction. I have talked about a phone addiction and trying to address this in the past on the podcast. If you've been a longtime listener, you've definitely heard me bring it up. But I've reached my final tipping point, and I'm doing it for good. And I have been doing it for a couple of weeks at this point. And the TLDR is it feels fantastic. I no longer want to be wasting my life on my phone and on social media, and you shouldn't either. So we're going to cover today why I'm doing it, the social media's impact on the brain and like some of the effects that too much social media can have on you. And, hint, hint, they're all negative. And tactical things I'm doing to actually follow this and make it sustainable and real in my life. Because, like I've mentioned, I've tried to do this in the past and I don't really feel like I set myself up for success to do really well with walking away from social media in the way that makes sense for me to also balance it with my business. So, basically, if you are someone who also maybe hasn't been enjoying the role that social media is playing in your life and you want to create some boundaries, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode because obviously, since social media is, the engine that keeps my business alive, I can't fully be off of it. And I think that, again, when we, even through the lens of financials, when we think about overconsumption versus no buys, I always follow the prescription of buying less and buying better. It kind of falls right in between. And so I think this is actually a really great approach to falling in the in between where you're not like fully rogue, because I know that sometimes going fully rogue and not being on social media at all can also feel not great. And also not being like way too addicted to it, if that makes sense. So with that, let's just get right into it. So part one here is why I need to do this. I have 3 key reasons. First being is that I'm addicted to my phone in a bad way, or I was. I'm not anymore because I've been doing this now, I think, long enough where I'm starting to see the positive effects. I basically found that I was spending hours and hours a day on my phone. My screen time was alarming. And part of that, is related to work. But when I'm saying I'm scrolling on my phone for work, I'm lying to myself. I'm not. I'm just scrolling to scroll. Like, I don't need to be scrolling on social media for my job. I can go on there for 10 minutes and do the research that I need to be doing. Telling myself that I'm, getting inspo or whatever, I'm lying to myself. And I'm aware of that. This came up in my, with my therapist, which was really honestly one of the biggest catalysts for me doing this is I started going to therapy and basically my therapist was like, well, have you ever considered deleting your social media? And I was like, no. And here we are. So anyways, I found that I was spending way too much time on the daily on my phone. Basically, if you spend like a couple hours a day on your phone, every week it ends up being just about a full day. And over the course of the entire year, that could turn into like a full month of the year that you spent just staring at your phone, which I know is hard to conceptualize, but it's kind of real and it's actually disgusting. And again, not how I want to be living my life, right? Like we only get one life. Why are we living it staring at our phones? I also found that at night, if I was watching a show, I would be constantly grabbing my phone. But a lot of times, and like over the last few years specifically, I've found that I've been using TikTok as like my nightly show instead of actually watching something or like unwinding in a different way. And I don't want to be doing that anymore at all. Like I just don't want to be spending more than 5 minutes at a time on TikTok. I habitually reach for my phone all day long. And I find that I also habitually used to be using social media to fill empty space in my day. So like if I was doing my red light face mask, instead of just sitting there in silence or reading a book, like I would be scrolling on TikTok. Or if I'm brushing my teeth, I would have TikTok up on my little stand here watching. Like I don't need to be on social media in those in-between times. And what I think that did is it just trains your brain to crave it more and to not be able to sit in silence. And I used to be able to sit in silence and I no longer feel like I really can. And that's a problem. And there's no reason for it. Like this just isn't how I want to be. I don't want to be someone who's chronically online. I don't want to be someone who's constantly reaching for my phone. I don't want to be using my phone as a crutch when I'm feeling uncertain or anxious in my life. I want to be able to handle those things. And I think with social media being so ever present, it's become that for many of us. I know that I'm not the only one who experiences this. I know lots of you listening to this probably feel this way too, or have experienced these things in one way or another in your own life. And so if any of that resonates with you, you're probably ready to go through a little bit of a dopamine detox and a phone detox. The second big reason is that I've been experiencing a ton of comparison, and this was something that I was talking to my therapist about and where it really all came up, is I find that I'm comparing myself a lot, both from a business perspective and from a personal perspective, because I use social media for both. So when I'm thinking about my business, for example, like I'd see other creators who are getting deals that, maybe in the past I would have been getting, or that I could have been a great fit for. And I'm not getting the reach or the likes that I used to get. I'm not getting the engagement on my posts that I used to get. And part of that has to do with the algorithm. It's outside of my control. But when, you see new creators enter the space, which I'm very supportive of and I think is really great because everyone can make a living online. But when you see new people come in and they're kind of having their moment, it's challenging when like I was having my moment and now I'm not anymore, and it's frustrating because I put a lot of time and effort into my content. I put a lot of time and effort into my business. Obviously, my business is very important to me. I feel like it's part of my identity. So when you equate so much value, and I have to, because this is how I live. So when I equate so much value to something and I'm not getting that return that I used to see or that I feel like I should be getting, it leads to a lot of comparison and it's frustrating. And so as a result, I'd constantly be checking my notifications, and it's just not a healthy way to engage in something that's integral to my livelihood, because in order for me to feel creative and to be more objective in my business, I can't be obsessing over analytics and over numbers. I think there's a healthy way to analyze content and see what's working and what's not working. And I wasn't doing that. And I think it was really inhibiting my creativity, which we'll talk about in a moment. From a personal standpoint, I am turning 30 very soon, and I have a lot of anxiety about it that I'm working on releasing, because turning 30 is not the end of your life. I do think that 29 is the worst age because it's so awkward. You're not really in your 20s and you're just about to turn 30, so there's a lot of pressure and anxiety about it. And it's also a very turning point period of time in your life where literally everyone is kind of doing something different. So I am comparing my life stage to other people that I follow on my personal Instagram. And why am I doing that? Because 90% of these people, with all due respect, I don't give a literal fuck about. I'm not talking to them. They're not in my life. They're from high school people I don't talk to, college people I don't talk to. Why should I care? But, when it's in your face, obviously it's oh, well, so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so is having a baby. And did you see so-and-so got engaged to whoever? And it's who cares? I literally don't. But because it's in front of me, it gives the illusion of me caring. And so with my personal Instagram, I just completely got rid of it. I don't need to be on there. I don't need to talk to people on Instagram. I don't care. And what it was doing is it was just making me feel very behind and very pessimistic about my life. And if I want to see changes in my life and I want those things to happen to me, I can't assume that they're not going to, because they're happening for other people. It's not healthy. Again, it's something I'm talking about with my therapist, but it has made me feel very isolated in my life stage, which I don't want to feel anymore. And feeling is a choice, right? So basically, I came to the realization of not only do I not care, but this isn't serving me, and I'm making the choice to constantly be consuming this, and I don't have to do that anymore, and it's very liberating. So I'm no longer torturing myself on Instagram, and it's fabulous. Highly recommend. The last thing here is my need to reclaim my creativity. I'm finding, as I mentioned, through comparison and through being obsessed with the analytics on my business, I've lost my ability to be creative, because instead of thinking about content that is, exciting and interesting, I'm thinking about what content is going to help me sell my templates so that I can make money. And that's a problem. And that's never how I approached it in the past. And I never had an issue. And I feel like once things started to change in terms of the numbers and my reach went down, I'm okay, less eyeballs turns into less sales, which is very real. However, getting more eyeballs, I have to be thinking about my content a little bit differently rather than constantly feeling the need to sell. And if you've noticed that, I'm so sorry. If you haven't noticed it, pretend I didn't say that. But we're working on, just making my content feel better and more exciting and more interesting, not only to to the consumer, but also to me, because I don't want to be creating boring content anymore. It's honestly not fun. So I, was looking at what's working for other people instead of working for me, instead of really just thinking about what do I want to do? I also think another layer of this is I developed popcorn brain, which is a new term for me. It's basically a state where the brain struggles to focus due to constant digital stimulation, leading to shortened attention span and difficulty concentrating on less engaging tasks. And basically, it means your thoughts are jumping from one thing to another, like kernels popping in a microwave, which can impact focus, productivity, and mental well-being. And so I've mentioned in the past, I feel like my business has given me ADD, which I was never diagnosed with that. I just have very clearly lost my ability to focus. And losing your ability to focus also inhibits creativity when you're constantly jumping from one thing to another to another. You're not getting into a flow state. I could never focus on actually getting things done. So I just constantly felt like I didn't have enough time. I was overwhelmed. I was stressed. And all of that impacts your ability to feel creative. And to be a creator and a successful one, you have to be able to be creative. And so I just overall, I don't want to be like this. I don't want social media to control my life. And so I finally decided that it was time to create boundaries with socials that will ultimately help me retrain my brain to stop habitually thinking about it, for one, and also seeking the dopamine hit that comes from being on it. You literally train yourself to reach for your phone. You train yourself to want those notifications. And I think if you're a creator and you're getting constant notifications, which is what happens, every time you go onto social media, there's something new and someone new commenting, someone new engaging. And it's fun at first, but after a while, it's just I don't even know these people. With no disrespect, I'm very happy all of you guys are here. And obviously, it's very important that you please stay. But it can't be something that I am, taking on so much burden with. It's not a healthy way to live, and it's not how any creator should be living. We do need to be learning how to create those boundaries sort of as we go and relearn how to focus. Focus is a muscle. You do have to train it, and constant interruptions from social media reduce our ability to do that. So creator or not, if you're listening to this, you also probably have some sort of, I think it's a sliding scale, but some sort of addiction to social media. It's a spectrum. I just happened to fall really high on that, and I don't want to be on it. I'd rather be on the lower end and be able to control the impulse with social media. They actually, equate social media to gambling, which we'll talk about. That's a good segue, which is part 2, social media's impact on the brain. And there are 3 key ways I'm going to cover here. In 3 key ways that social media impacts our brains and our behavior, many in ways that we are not even, fully consciously aware of. So the neurological effects of social media, we've all heard this, there's a dopamine release cycle with social media, and algorithms in the For You page and the Explore page and the Reels page and everything is all created to constantly be releasing dopamine in the brain to keep you hooked. And it's very, very real because, again, every single person listening to this has gotten sucked into either a TikTok or an Instagram Reels vortex. If you're one of those people who is I've never had TikTok, good for you, don't get it. But I know you've been sucked into Instagram one way or another. We've all experienced being sucked into social media. And it's because social media activates, your brain's reward center by releasing dopamine constantly. It's designed to keep you on the platform. And so they do this with infinite scrolling. They do this with notifications and likes and just all of it. And as I mentioned a few seconds ago, it's very similar to the dopamine in the cycles of gambling, where, you could gamble forever, especially if you're doing slots. It never ends, and it's constantly trying to keep you hooked, where it will give you, you'll win a little bit of money and then you have more money to put into it. And that's how social media is. You have a post that goes viral and you want to go back into it, or, you see a post you really like and you want to get more. And so basically, this has led to us being addicted to our phones. And the only way to break the cycle is to detox from it. The other, behavior thing that I want to cover, there's 2 more. This one is related to social awareness. Women are more vulnerable to the negative impacts of social media than men, and my audience, especially on the podcast, is predominantly women. So basically, we're more likely to become emotionally invested in content And as a result, this leads to higher rates specifically in women of persistent sadness, depression, and poor mental health, which I think we can all relate to. I wouldn't consider myself an empath, but I do feel a lot of empathy. And I find that, when I see sad stories on social media, it makes me very sad. And it's like, obviously, sad things happen in the world, but we're not designed to know about them all the time. Like, this is also a very real thing. I think the other thing social media has done, and if you relate to this, let me know. For me specifically, social media has trained me to hate men. And, some of that is justified, right? Like, there's definitely some truth to that. However, I would like to marry a man. And so how can I do that if I hate men? So I'm working on unlearning that, because when you get into a topic where you watch a whole video, then your whole For You page becomes that. And what I've noticed is like a lot of my For You page has become about the male loneliness epidemic and how men aren't, progressing, and how marriage, really only positively impacts men and it doesn't positively impact women. And like, yes, there's a lot of truth to that, and those experiences and that research is very real. But what my therapist and I have really been working on is my black and white thinking of like, yes, that's real in certain instances, but it's definitely not real in all instances. Like, and I have lots of examples in my life of how that isn't real. And so overall, like, that's just an example of how it's impacted our social awareness and impacted how we perceive things, because social media is an echo chamber, and what you see on social media you think is what everyone else is seeing and what is real and true, and that's just not rooted in reality. Like, it's literally not real. So that is an issue for me. I think, the social connectivity paradox and cancel culture and all of that is another problem that we're starting to see, because obviously these platforms are designed for social connection, and this leads to increased isolation, because instead of creating relationships in the real world, we're creating relationships with influencers online who we don't even know. I'm going to say I don't do this. Like, I follow people, but the people I follow, again, I say this with all due respect, like, I don't care what they're doing in their lives unless we've met and we are friends in real life. Like, I have some creator friends who obviously I care about their lives, but I know them, but people who I've never met in real life, like, I'm not emotionally invested in their lives, and nobody should be, right? Like, you can hope that they do well and wish them well. I think that's really important. But, this idea that we are entitled to hold people accountable, quote unquote, and like tell them how they have to think and tell them how they have to behave, it's wacky. It's not normal, and it needs to be studied. Like, that is not normal social behavior. And I always get a lot of flack when I use the word normal. I'm sorry. If you think that yelling at people online and criticizing people online who you don't even know, who your perception of them is only based off of what they choose to share, you're a weirdo and you need to seek professional help. And we've normalized that behavior through developing these parasocial relationships with people online. And like I said, there's no other way to put it. This is not normal behavior. It's not behavior that I want to participate in. I don't participate in it. But it's also not behavior that I want to be on my social pages, which some people have a really hard time understanding. Like, again, with all due respect, when you come into my break your budget, don't depend on daddy world, like, you're in my territory, right? And like, this is shared territory. I'd love for us to have conversations, but people get mad. Like, if you say something rude about me, if you say something that's untrue about me, if you're intentionally trying to insult me, I'm going to delete it. And if that makes you mad, like, I don't really care. And I think that, again, people who are crazy on social media, because of social media, have lost their ability to realize that, like, this is not real, right? Like, so anyways, I'm going on a tangent, but hopefully you understand what I mean by this, like, parasocial social connectivity paradox. And through this erratic online behavior, we've then lost our ability to act normally in real life. So like, people don't look at each other, people don't talk to each other. Main topics of conversation are around social media. Like, it just, I think, has so dramatically changed human behavior. And I don't want to be part of that. Like, I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be able to continue to have and hold conversations in person. I want to be able to look people in the eye. I want to be able to walk outside on the street and not be looking at my phone. And I just feel like we've lost our ability to do that. So, yeah, those are some of the big reasons. Oh, physical health too. I'm going to touch on this very quickly. Obviously, being on your phone can impact your sleep, especially if you're scrolling at night. Big recommendation. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you're not reading, you're missing out on life. You should be reading instead of scrolling. It's a very easy swap. It does take a little bit of time to train your brain to like want to read. However, reading changed my life. Reading also helped repair my relationship with my phone at night and in bed. I'm never on my phone in bed because I'm reading and I want to read. So, and that does help with better sleep. Because if you're scrolling on TikTok, like that increases cortisol, the blue light can impact your ability to have a normal circadian rhythm and actually recognize that it's nighttime. So definitely getting off of your phone at night is important, but being on your phone can impact your sleep, which obviously if you're not sleeping well, that can impact your entire life. It also has a negative impact on the connection between your mind and your gut because social media can cause a lot of anxiety. It can cause depression. Both of those things have happened to me. I think, as social media has played a result in those. I've talked about my anxiety a lot on the podcast. Like social media does not help for sure. But that can lead to physical symptoms, again, like high adrenaline, high cortisol, and that can impact your bodily functions, which is it's so important. We're not talking about that. And it, obviously I think can lead to less physical activity because if you're sitting on the couch scrolling on your phone, you are not outside working out, doing physical activity, walking around, etc. I think that's a little bit more of a stretch, but I would imagine, especially for younger people and kids, that social media, if not controlled by parents and whatnot, can lead to more or less activity. So those are social media's impact on the brain. If you, feel any sort of way about anything I shared there, we went a little bit off script, let me know. Now we're going to get into the actual tactics of how I have and am continuing to create the boundaries with my social media. So my goal is not to necessarily eliminate social media entirely. As I've mentioned, I have to be on for my business and I intend to be, right? I think social media can play or can have a positive impact on our lives when done so with intention. And my goal is to just make it more intentional. When you properly curate your feed, you curate who you're following, what you're consuming, and you implement hard boundaries, I think that social media can play a role in your day. It just needs to be a little bit more controlled. I don't want to not be on it at all, but I do want my time on there to be limited and intentional. So the first thing I did is I deleted some of the apps and rearranged the apps on my phone. So with Instagram, I actually have two phones. So my first phone is like my texting phone, my phone that has service. It's like my actual phone that I use to communicate with people. And on that phone, I deleted all my social media apps because I just don't need them on there. On my work phone, this is a phone, it doesn't have cell service. I just use it on Wi-Fi and it's to like create content and have social media and stuff on there. On that phone, I did two things. One is I moved TikTok to a different page, like a different apps page. So I have to actually scroll a few slides on my phone to get to it. It's not like visually there when I open up my phone, which is really helpful for forgetting that it's even on my phone in the first place. With Instagram on my work phone, I have been deleting and re-downloading the app every day. I know that sounds kind of annoying, and I'll be honest, it is kind of annoying, but the extra, couple of minutes it takes for me to go through that process is so worth the mental clarity I experience for the rest of the day. And basically, I have allocated per day about a 45-minute period. It kind of ebbs and flows depending on what's going on, but I have 45 minutes of the day where I am on social media. I'm posting my content everywhere it needs to go. I am posting on my Instagram stories. I'm replying to comments. I'm replying to DMs. I'm engaging because I want to be present. I want to respond. I don't want to be not there, but I'm doing so in a finite period of time. And then I am deleting the app and walking away. If I have a little time in that 45 minutes, I'll scroll, I'll look at what's going on with, other people that I'm following. I'm very intentional about who I follow, specifically on my business Instagram. But I set a timer, and once the timer's up, I'm moving on. And I'm like really tough about this because I think you have to be the one to hold yourself accountable. I listened to a podcast today, and it was, self-care is a form of self-respect. And for me, when I'm thinking about self-respect, I have to have enough respect for myself to create that boundary and stick to it. And it is hard. It was really hard right at the beginning, but I do feel a lot better now. Which sort of leads into number 2 here, the second thing I'm doing, and that's getting rid of all of the physical triggers. So I don't get any notifications on either of my phones outside of text, and usually during the day, my phones are on Do Not Disturb anyways. But I don't have any Instagram notifications. I don't have any news notifications. We haven't even talked about the news, but I don't want to pick up my phone and the first thing that I see, something really horrible and scary going on in the world. Obviously, I like to stay informed. I have controlled time where I read the news in the morning. That's part of my workday. But I am not constantly hearing the updates on everything that's going on all the time. And I think that that's really, really, really important, especially if you are someone like me who has a lot of anxiety and just a lot of fear. I have a lot of fear of just existing. So eliminating the news in that way has been really helpful. So I don't get any notifications. If I'm on my bed or on the couch, my phone is on the counter. It is not allowed in my bed. It's not allowed in my bedroom. I no longer sit in my bed and scroll on my phone ever. And when I'm sitting on the couch, part of this is to retrain my ability to focus on what I'm watching, what I'm consuming in a long form way. My phone is out of the way because historically, if a commercial came on or, if I got a little bored with whatever I was watching, I'd reach for my phone and I get sucked back in. And I just don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. There's no other way to put it. I don't want to be like that. And I don't think, again, we should be like that. So for me to be able to eliminate even the desire to reach for my phone, it's not in my awareness. And if I do want to go on my phone, I have to actually get up and go get it. So that has been really, really helpful. I will say this was hard, and being off of social media in an entirety kind of way like this was hard for 3 days. Okay. I think it sounds really cumbersome and really overwhelming, but it wasn't. It was hard for a few days because, you're getting used to something new. But honestly, after those few days, all of a sudden I just felt significantly better. I don't know if you can even tell through the way I'm talking to the camera or how this is going. I just feel so much better. I mean, obviously it's not a solution for all of my woes and problems in life, right? But it definitely has helped me feel less pessimistic and less hopeless about life, which is so fascinating. And I think really that stems from comparison and constant inundation of everyone else's lives and problems, which again, I say this as respectfully as possible. I don't really care. I should and you don't either, right? That's not me being unique. You care about the people who are in your life, and you care maybe about a couple of influencers or whoever who you follow, but you don't really care. Let's say you follow 1,000 people on Instagram. You don't truly deeply in your heart care about everything that they're doing. Again, don't misinterpret caring as not wishing someone well. I don't wish harm upon anyone, obviously. I wish everybody a lovely, happy life, but I just don't need to know all the time. And I think that that's totally fine. The desire to scroll was there, and it still kind of is here or there. I find it happens in moments of silence when I'm kind of I'm bored and I have nothing to do, but I've learned how to fill my time, which we'll get to. The desire to scroll has still been there, but I've just been trying to retrain my focus. So another thing I've been working on in therapy has been to recognize thoughts when they come up and retrain them. And so basically when the desire to scroll comes up, I'm acknowledging it. I'm not pushing it away, but I'm also not acting on it. I'm doing something else, which again, I'll talk to in a moment. So that I will say has been the experience of getting off of it. And now a couple weeks in, I really don't think about Instagram or TikTok at all during the day. And I look forward to my 45 minutes because I know that like I'll get whatever dopamine, whatever. And then I eliminate the desire, I eliminate the trigger, and I literally just move on. And it's been very beneficial for me. In general, I'm finding I'm more mentally focused. I'm more focused with work. I've become a little bit more excited about work. I don't dread it as much, which is so important because I feel like I lost my spark with work and content. And like, this isn't a sustainable career path for me to be on if I can't find a way to maintain that creative spark and interest and desire. I also just feel happier in general because I don't have so much noise clouding my view of the day. I'm not like, for example, and this is awful, but I'm going to say it, like I see someone getting engaged and I would feel sad about my own life. Like I feel happy for them, but why am I internalizing someone else's like happiest moment of their life as a lack in my life? Like I know that that's a normal behavior, but I just don't want to feel like that. And I don't want that to impact my day, especially again from someone who like, for the lack of a better way to put it, like who I don't necessarily care about. Like we're not in communication. So why is Sally from 2010 getting engaged to some guy I don't know impacting my day? Like it just shouldn't be. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know that that's not an outrageous thing to feel or say. It feels weird saying it out loud, to be honest, because I don't want to come off as like, someone who doesn't care about anyone. To be clear, like I've said, I don't not wish people well, but people who aren't in your lives, like we just don't need to know what's going on in their lives. I also find that I have a lot more time because I honestly didn't realize how much time I was spending scrolling. Like I would just constantly be reaching for my phone. 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes, and 10 minutes a couple times throughout the day is a full hour. Like I could use that hour for a million different things. So I just feel like I'm able to actually get things done, and it's super satisfying. And I also have just more time to do the things that I want to do, which is great. The last thing here that I'm going to talk about is how I've been filling my time with alternative activities, and also like when I do feel the urge to scroll, what I've been doing. So just in general, I've been reading a lot more, and I do this at night, which I always used to do, but because I'm not, accidentally scrolling in a TikTok vortex until 9:45 p.m., I get into bed around 9 and I read for like an hour, and it's great. I also have been spending a little bit of time in the morning to read nonfiction books. At night, I only read fiction. But in the morning, I'm giving myself 15 to 30 minutes to sit down and read nonfiction so that I can learn something. It's fantastic. Like, it's literally fantastic. So I said this earlier. I'll say it again. If you are not reading, you are missing out on life. Please, please, please start reading. Like, everyone who reads, like, you get it. If you read, you understand. If you don't read, you might classify yourself as not a reader. You need to read ACOTAR. Okay, I know people are like, I can't get into it. I don't like the fantasy thing. You will like it. I didn't either, okay? I said the same things. I read it. Then I read all of Throne of Glass. I'm totally hooked. I'm obsessed with it. And all of it, just read it, okay? Read it and then come back to me and tell me that you don't like to read. That's a dare and a challenge. Next is I walk without apps. So like I said, on my phone that I take like out into the real world, I don't have social media on there. So I can't even go on there to like mindlessly scroll Instagram while I'm walking or check Instagram while I'm walking, which people do that. And I see people do it all the time, and I used to do it as well. When I'm walking, I'm doing music or podcasts only, and I also choose what I'm going to listen to before I leave for my walk so that I can just put my phone in my bag and not even be on it at all. You would be surprised at how frequently, again, you reach for your phone until you zip it up and you put it away with no urge to grab anything. I'm not looking at texts, if I'm expecting a text, okay, but generally, like, I'm not really texting anyone when I'm walking. It's my time to just completely be off my phone and be immersed in real life, looking around. And I just think that when we're outside, we shouldn't be looking at our phones. Next is I use notebooks and journaling for moments where I'm feeling really stressed or anxious. In the past, if I was feeling stressed or anxious, I'd reach for my phone because that's sort of like a self-soothe. Now I have a journal right here. This is where I do my morning pages. So I've been reading The Artist's Way, which is, a program, quote unquote, to help you spark and get your creativity back. And part of that is doing morning pages. And so it's where you sit down and you write 3 pages every morning and just dump out your brain. My therapist actually told me, because I was like, oh, I feel like this is really helping me in the morning. And she was like, well, why don't you do it throughout the day too? And I'm like, what a great idea, right? Like the thing about therapy is like they just draw attention to things that you could have thought on your own, but you never like let yourself. So if I find I'm feeling stressed or anxious throughout the day, I just brain dump it out on my notebook, and it takes 5 minutes and I instantly feel better. Kind of amazing how that works. It's not really like journaling. It's just getting your thoughts onto paper and releasing them that way. I also do breathing techniques. So again, if I'm feeling stressed or anxious or the urge to reach for my phone now, anytime I feel the habitual urge, I've kind of broken the habitual of it all, but the urge to grab my phone, I do box breathing 5 times. So while box breathing is when you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold it for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4 counts, and then you hold it for 4 counts. I'll go through that 5 times. And usually that like calms whatever I'm feeling, and I'm no longer have the desire to reach for my phone. Really, really helpful, honestly, because it just redirects your energy to something else. And it takes enough time, it takes like a minute, where you're not thinking about grabbing your phone anymore. It's almost like a gentle push in a different direction. And the last thing I do is I've been making an effort to practice like in real life social skills. So what does this mean? When I'm out and about, if I make eye contact with people, I smile if someone says hello to me. I say hello to someone in the elevator in my building. If I'm checking out at the grocery store, I'm engaging in conversation. Like I'm just acting like a normal person. And most people aren't acting like that. We've lost our ability, again, for social interactions, casual interactions in real life. And think about how much life we've missed out on by not doing that. I don't want a really positive thing that could happen in my life to pass me by because I'm looking at my phone. So I'm really making an effort to practice real life social skills in settings that make me a little bit uncomfortable. And it's actually not as hard as you think. So I've been doing this for a few weeks. I have noticed a tangible difference overall in how I feel. I also feel like when I'm on social media now, I am on there for a reason, not just to like blindly fill empty space in my day or fill an empty void in my life. I'm filling that void with other things like relationships and hobbies and things that make me happy instead of consuming what everyone else is doing. So if you've been thinking about doing a social media detox, I highly recommend you implement some of these strategies. If you are inspired, I'd love to hear about it. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, I would also love to hear about it. If you have kind or polite feedback, as always, please leave me a review. If you have unkind or impolite feedback, I recommend that you do some box breathing before you say something mean to me. And with that, I will catch you next week. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.